And I'm just going to introduce Sebastian here. Sebastian found the Urantia book in 2001 as he had actually created a fan page for the science fiction author J.J. Benitez, who's a very, very popular author in the Spanish language. And then he was contacted and somebody said, do you know where J.J. Benitez got many of his ideas? So he's one of many Spanish-speaking people who were introduced to the Urantia book through J.J. Benitez. And in his other life, he's a software developer or something like that. And then after finding the Urantia book, he spent about 10 years reading on his own. And then in 2011, we had a meeting for Urantia book. They called it a young leader meeting in Frankfurt. And it was such a joy to see Sebastian show up with his enthusiasm. So thank you, Sebastian. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I will start. For the past centuries, Christianity has been the dominant force in Europe and Western civilization. Churches were full, and religion was an integral part of life. Today, churches are empty. For the last decades, church attendance in both Europe and the US has been in steady decline. Current generations don't turn to Christianity for answers anymore, as they did in previous times. What does this mean for us as Urantia book readers? What consequences does it have for our movement? And what shall we do? In this talk, I would like to explore these questions with you. For this, I want to discuss two ideas. First idea of progression, and second, the difference between the group and the individual. We might find that our current situation regarding religion in Europe is not so bad after all. Lastly, I would like to invite you to see Christianity not as a failure or as a roadblock to our movement, but as a chance. Let us start with the first idea. Progression. Have you noticed that we, humans, hardly come up with anything completely new? Yes, we do innovate, and we are creative, but we are constantly basing our advances on what is already there. And very often, we are even limited by what is available to us. For example, let's take something we all knew, cars. Did you know that Leonardo da Vinci already envisioned a horseless, self-moving cart? The design was not based on a motor, but on coil springs, like a watch. The cart would only go as far as 40 meters. Then it had to get recoiled again, like a watch. And of course, this was no better than a horse, and never got built. Have you heard the expression, ahead of its time? Many things Leonardo envisioned were clearly ahead of his time. He had designs for submarines, flying machines, and so on. While his ideas were very advanced, the technology was not there. Leonardo's historical context effectively limited him. It was only centuries later, when engines became available, that a practical car could have built. So when we think of progression, we often think of advancement. But progression is more than just advancement. Consider this. First, when you progress, you're standing somewhere. Your context matters a lot. The opposite expression of ahead of its time would be at the right place and the right time, or an idea whose time has come. I'm sure you have heard this expression before. And second, in a progression, you move one step at a time, and only one. You don't move too fast or you fail. As the saying goes, you have to learn to crawl before you learn to walk. You have to learn to walk before riding a bicycle. It makes more sense then to think of progression not as advancement, but as a series of steps. A series of steps where the following applies. First, your current position matters, and second, you move only one step at a time. We could call this the laws of progression. Only if the laws apply, progress can be made. Otherwise, we have an ahead of its time situation. So what does this have to do with us? Well, this religious progress is not exempt from these laws. Trying to understand how these laws apply to religious progress, I looked at the Urantia book for examples. My question was, what happens whenever an advanced or revealed truth, religious truth, is introduced? I have encountered the following three situations. One, if the advanced truth is not compatible with the times, or too advanced, there is opposition and it gets rejected. It's ahead of its time. It's failure. Two, if advanced truth is compatible with the times, it gets accepted. Right place at the right time. However, because there is always an existing human context, usually something else happens. Three, advanced truth is accepted partially, in a distorted way. It survives only after making some concessions, some compromises, which was previously there. In summary, because of an existing human context, progression is slow and happens with some compromises. And there have been many cases of such compromises in our history. Let's look at some of them from our book. During Melchizedek's time, we are told that his message of salvation through faith alone, that is without sacrifices, was so advanced that there were auxiliary outposts outside of Salem, in which sacrifices were still being made. Melchizedek knew about this, but there was not much he could do. He had to compromise. After Melchizedek, we have the remarkable Ignaton in Egypt. Ignaton tried to introduce monotheism, the monotheism of Melchizedek, in a polytheistic society. He wisely disguised monotheism behind sun worship, elevating the sun god above all others. This was an acceptable compromise to his contemporaries. But he also tried to advance more than one step at a time when he tried to introduce the concept of a universal God, a God of all nations. At that time, what people were only ready for was a national God. He was met with fierce opposition from the priests, who tried to undo all that he had done. Later came the matchless Moses. Moses also had good records of the teachings of Melchizedek, but considered his starting point very carefully. He elevated the tribal god Yahweh, worshipped as a golden calf, as superior above all other tribal gods. He had to sell this idea through threats of retribution, though. He proclaimed just God, a God of justice, a God that had chosen his people to make a covenant and form a new nation. He would bring them prosperity as long as they obeyed his commandments. Of the mercy and love of God, Moses could teach very little at that time. It would have undermined his message. Moses had to compromise. And even Jesus had to compromise. Remember how hesitant he was at the beginning to be related with the Messiah? At some point he simply gave up. He allowed his apostles to persist in this erroneous belief. The concept of the Messiah was simply too ingrained in the mind of his associates. Same thing with the kingdom of heaven. The Urantia book says that he would have preferred to use other more spiritual terms, such as fellowship, family, or brotherhood. But these concepts were too advanced. He had to compromise. And later came Paul. The Urantia book says about him that he was a great organizer and that he and his successors were sagacious compromisers and keen theological traders. The rest is history. Christianity got Hellenized, paganized, ritualized, and so on. So we often wonder Why didn't the religion of Jesus conquer the world after the master was gone? Why was a human-made, compromise-ridden religion about Jesus, Christianity, the one that was successful instead? In my opinion, Christianity, as it happened, was inevitable. Let me explain. Once a revelatory mission is over, matters inevitably are left in our own imperfect human hands. The revealed truth takes its own natural course and blends with the evolutionary currents already present. Melchizedek knew this when training his missionaries and sending them away. Jesus knew this when he entrusted matters to his apostles before departing. The revelators made this crystal clear with their last sentence when they said, "Now you are on your own." Christianity got Hellenized, paganized, and ritualized because those influences, Hellenic culture and pagan rituals, existed and were strong. People were responding to them, needing them, expecting them, even for centuries to come. Those were necessary steps in our progression, religious progression. Christianity's compromises with these existing forces were necessary to secure adoption. And we all know what happened to Abner's uncompromising church in Philadelphia. But even with its many compromises, the Urantia book calls Christianity, quote, the best of the religions of the 20th century, and tells us that, quote, Christianity must not be despised. Christianity is, let's not forget, the context in which the Urantia book was revealed. Christianity is to the Urantia book revelation what Judaism was to Jesus' bestowal, life, and teachings. His apostles, disciples were open-minded, truth-seeking Jews. Similarly, the Urantia book was revealed to a group of open-minded, truth-seeking Christians, expanding on Christian theology in a so-called Christian nation. Despite its flaws, Christianity has been enormously successful and got us where we are now. But times seem to be different today. People are turning away from the church. What happened? What should we do? Part 2. The group and the individual. Paper 195, after Pentecost, is perhaps my favorite paper. I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating because it bridges the time of Jesus with ours, helping us understand our situation better. The Urantia book tells us that modern man will reject a religion which is not in harmony with our current and highest conceptions of truth, goodness, and beauty. Here, Christianity seems to be falling short in the eyes of any people. The people leaving the church. Well, that means it's our turn, right? We go out to the streets and start evangelizing everybody with the Urantia book. We make advertisements on television and so on. Yeah, bring it on. You tell me, what do you think? Based on your experiences, what would the results be? I'm sure many of you have had success and good experiences in presenting the Urantia book to selected individuals. But let me ask you this. Who here thinks that the world at large is not yet ready for the Urantia book? Raise hands. I agree. In my opinion, the world in total is not yet ready. If you have read and believed the publication mandate, it says that the book has been given to us long before the day of its worldwide mission, the day when people are willing to seek truth and righteousness. So where does this leave us? And what shall we do? And where does Christianity fit in all this? It seems that the world is not yet ready for the Urantia book, but take a look at this room. Take a look at yourselves. It seems that some people are ready for it after all. This led me to the following realization. What is true for the group is not always true for the individual. For example, Jesus and the Urantia book say that his people rejected him. Really? Did they? Well, as a group, yes, but did all of them reject him? No, of course not. His apostles were Jewish, as most of his disciples and first converts. These were special people, exceptional, not in the sense of superior, no, exceptional as in exception to the rule. You are also exceptional. You are an exception to the rule.
Thank you.
Okay. The rule, we said that the world is not ready for the Urantia book. But you were at some point. Let me ask you this, however. Were you always ready? Or did it take some time? Or if I can put it this way, did you have to take maybe some previous steps, or which you had to progress through until you were ready? Bringing back the idea of progression from the first part, I would like to point out that there is group progression on the one hand and individual progression on the other. Previously, we touched on the progression of the God concept at the group level, from Melchizedek through Moses to Jesus. In contrast to group or society progression, which is often slow, individuals progress at their own pace, often independently from the bigger group they belong to. Like the missionaries of Machiaventum, these were exceptional people, or like the truth-seeking Jews and Greeks following Jesus, or like you did. And we can help others also. We can apply the laws of progression on an individual basis. And again, we only need to look at Jesus on how to do this. My favorite example is how he dealt with and how he prepared the religious teachers in Rome. Let me read. Never once did he attack their errors or even mention the flaws in their teachings. In each case, he would select the truth in what they taught and then proceed so to embellish and illuminate this truth in their minds, that in a very short time, this enhancement of the truth effectively crowded out the associated error. And thus were these Jesus-taught men and women prepared for the subsequent recognition of additional and similar truths in the teachings of the early Christian missionaries. Another beautiful part from the life of Jesus, which illustrates this point, is his explanation to Simon Zelotes after failing to deal with Teherna, the Persian. He tells Simon that we should not take things out of people's souls, but put things into them, which is precisely what he was doing with the Roman religious leaders. He was not telling them what not to believe, he was enhancing what was already there. He goes on precisely to tell Simon that he has come not to denounce Moses and the prophets, but to present a perfected version of what they already believed. And we find statements like this elsewhere during his ministry. So I think that there is a great need and potential for training here, for our training. Training in first, becoming masters at reading people, discovering where they are, and second, to lead them to their following next step, which will probably not be the Urantia book. We need to be patient and considerate of the situation of each individual. Remember first law. We were not always ready for the Urantia book. Most people will never be during this life, and that's okay. But most people can be taken one step further, second law. Jesus talks about this when he asks, are you more resourceful in revealing goodness to humanity today than you were yesterday? Are you a better righteousness recommender, this year than you were last year? Are you becoming increasingly artistic in your technique of leading hungry souls into the spiritual kingdom? And this work, this ministry, can be done both inside and outside of Christianity. Within Christianity, we can work in association with our fellow believers, try to love and understand them, maybe even enhance and embellish their beliefs without criticizing, like Jesus did with the Roman leaders. We should see Christians as brethren in faith. We have so much in common. We might not agree in everything theologically, but in spirit, the faith we profess is the same. And who knows what will happen with Christianity? Maybe it will embrace the gospel of the Master after all, the religion of Jesus. Imagine if we could play a role in that. Outside of Christianity, there is much to be done as well, perhaps even more so. Here we have the people that find Christianity lacking one way or the other. Many used to belong to a church would have grown disappointed, while others would not even consider it. People today are looking for answers in things like meditation, mindfulness, spirituality, psychology, and so on. And of course, science. Anything but religion. And after so many centuries of the totalitarian church, I really don't blame them. But still, the big questions remain. What is life about? How to be a good person? How to relate to others? How to find happiness? We can certainly help here as well. To honest truth seekers disappointed with biblical Christianity, we can offer a compelling alternative. Something that reaffirms the positive aspects of Christianity in a modern way, while correcting those aspects that render it unattractive and outdated in the eyes of many people. At some point, honest truth seekers will have to return to God, to real religion for answers. We are only human after all, and the Urantia book tells us that happiness is linked with spiritual progress and that nothing can take the place of God in human society. To summarize, Christianity is here. Christianity is our cultural background. Thanks to Christianity, people here in the West are familiar with the concept of a universal, personal, individually approachable and loving Father, which is a huge accomplishment. It took thousands of years, countless of lives, and a lot of effort to get us to this point. And even today, many parts of the world and most other religions don't share this blessing yet. We can do a lot as individuals, both within and outside of Christianity, but in any case, because of Christianity. People in the West, in Europe, know about the Father and about Jesus thanks to Christianity. And thanks to the Urantia book, we can offer a better version of both of them. While we work in our organizations, serving the group, and pursuing our long-term goals, we as individuals can do a lot as well. In our personal interactions, we can learn how to point people, one person at a time, one step at a time, in the right direction. Our Christian heritage will always be there. We can take that to our advantage while we go about doing good and sowing seeds. Thank you.